I'm Jenny, and in today's session, we're going to take a deep dive into listening practice at a C1 level. If you're looking to improve your English skills and think like a native speaker, this is the place to be. We'll keep things simple and clear, so don't worry if you don't understand everything right away. Just keep listening and things will start to click. Let's start with something that many learners find tricky: the difference between formal and informal English. It's easy to get caught up in thinking you have to sound perfect when speaking English, but honestly, being natural is more important. Native speakers don't always use the proper grammar rules you learn in textbooks. They make mistakes, they use slang, they shorten words, and they speak quickly. If you want to sound like them, you've got to get used to this casual flow of conversation. For example, imagine you're meeting someone new at a coffee shop. Instead of saying, "How are you today? I hope you are doing well," a native speaker might simply say, "Hey, how's it going?" It's much shorter and more relaxed, right? But the meaning is the same. If you want to be fluent, you have to get comfortable with this kind of language. So, practice listening to how people speak in different situations. Pay attention to how they change their tone or speed up or slow down depending on who they're talking to. Next, let's talk about how native speakers handle everyday situations. Let's say you're at a store and the cashier asks, "Do you need any help?" A non-native speaker might feel unsure how to respond. But if you listen closely, you'll realize that in a real conversation, the answer doesn't need to be complex. You could say, "I'm good, thanks," or "Actually, yes, I'm looking for a red jacket." Notice how both responses are natural and to the point. The key to becoming more fluent is knowing how to respond quickly and without hesitation. This doesn't come from memorizing phrases. It comes from regular practice. When you listen to conversations in movies, TV shows, or even real-life situations, pay attention to how people keep things simple and direct. The goal is to get to a point where you don't need to think too much about the words you use, and instead, your speech flows naturally. Let's move on to something else that's really important for understanding native speakers: contractions. In English, we use contractions all the time. For example, I am becomes I'm, you are becomes you're, and they have becomes they've. These little changes happen so often in spoken English that if you don't understand them, you might miss a lot of what's being said. So when you hear someone say, "She's coming over later," they're saying, "She is coming over later," but they've shortened it. It's a quicker, more efficient way to speak. If you're not familiar with contractions, it might be hard to follow the conversation at first, but once you get used to them, you'll find they make speaking much faster and smoother. Another thing to remember is the rhythm of English. Native speakers have a natural flow to their speech, where some words are emphasized more than others. It's not just about pronouncing every word equally. For example, in the sentence, "I'm going to the store," you would emphasize going and store more than I'm and to. This is what we call stress, and it's a key part of understanding and speaking English like a native. At the beginning, it might feel a little strange to focus on these things, but trust me, over time they'll start to feel natural. You won't even have to think about it anymore. It will just come out naturally as you practice more. So, don't stress if it feels tough at first. Keep listening to native speakers, and soon you'll be able to join in on conversations with ease. All right, now that we've covered some basics, let's dive into how to have real, natural conversations in English. The best way to improve your listening skills is to focus on how people talk in everyday situations. But here's the thing: Native speakers don't always speak in full sentences, and they often drop words. It's totally normal, but it can make listening a little tricky if you're not used to it. Let's take a look at how people respond when you ask them a question. Imagine you're talking to a friend and you ask, "What time is it?" A non-native speaker might expect the response to be something like, "It is 3:15 p.m." But a native speaker would probably just say, "It's 3:15. They'll drop the "it is," making it shorter and faster. This happens all the time in English, so when you listen to native speakers, don't be surprised if they leave out words. Instead of saying, "I don't have any idea about that," you'll hear, "I don't know." Or instead of, "I am going to the store later today," you'll hear, "I'm going to the store later." These shortcuts are part of how native speakers make their speech more fluid and quicker. It's also important to pay attention to how people use filler words in conversations. Words like, like, and are often used by native speakers when they're thinking or pausing during a conversation. You might hear a sentence like this. "I was, walking to the store when, I saw Sarah." These words don't add much meaning, but they help make the conversation feel more natural. It's a good idea to listen for these words when you're practicing.
Why?
Because when you speak, you'll naturally start using them too. And that's how you sound more like a native speaker. Plus, you'll get better at understanding conversations where these words pop up. But don't just focus on individual words. Listen to the rhythm of the sentence. English speakers often change the pace of their speech. For example, they might speak faster when they're excited or slower when they're explaining something important. The key to understanding is not just knowing the words, but also understanding how the speed and rhythm of speech change in different situations. For instance, if you're listening to a story, native speakers often speed up when they get to the exciting part. They'll say things like, "And then she just ran out of the house." The change in speed helps to emphasize the excitement and adds emotion to the story. If you listen closely, you'll notice this change in pace happening a lot in conversations, especially when people are telling a story or sharing news. Another thing to remember is how people react during conversations. Native speakers often use small responses to show they're listening or to keep the conversation going. You might hear someone say, "Really?" or "No way," or "Wow," even if they don't fully understand what's being said. These responses show they're engaged and interested, and they help keep the flow of the conversation moving. So, as you listen to more English, try to notice how people react to each other in conversations. You'll hear lots of short reactions like, "Yeah, right," or "I know." These aren't just random phrases. They're part of how people communicate naturally. Let's talk about slang for a moment. While it's important to understand the formal language of English, if you want to sound like a native speaker, you've got to learn some slang. Slang is the informal language that people use in casual conversations. It can be regional, so different parts of the world use different slang terms. For example, in the US, people might say, "What's up?" to ask how you're doing. In the UK, they might say, "You all right?" to mean the same thing. Slang makes your speech sound more relaxed and less formal. Learning slang can be tricky because it changes quickly. Words and phrases that were popular a few years ago might not be used as much anymore.
But that's okay.
The more you listen to real conversations, whether it's on the street, in movies, or even in songs, the more slang you'll pick up. Now, let's look at another part of natural conversation, how people give their opinions. Native speakers often make statements like, "I think," "I believe," "I feel," or in my opinion before they share their thoughts. For example, instead of saying, "This is a good movie," you might hear, "I think this movie is great," or "In my opinion, this movie is fantastic." These small phrases help soften the statement and show that it's just the speaker's personal opinion. Native speakers use these phrases a lot because they allow for open conversation, where people feel free to express their own views without being too direct. When you're speaking, try using these expressions too. They make your speech sound more natural and less like you're just reading from a textbook. Now that we've talked about the basics of natural conversation, let's dive deeper into how you can sharpen your listening skills. If you want to think like a native speaker, it's not just about knowing the words, it's also about understanding the way those words fit together in real-life conversations. One important thing to focus on is how people use context to help them understand each other. Native speakers often rely on the situation around them, the tone of voice, and even body language to fully understand what's being said. For example, let's say someone says, "It's getting late." Depending on the situation, this simple sentence could mean a few different things. If they're talking to you while you're both at a party, it could be a hint that they want to leave. But if you're in a meeting at work, it could just be a casual observation about the time. Native speakers pick up on these subtle clues all the time. They don't just listen to the words, they pay attention to the entire context. This is a skill that takes time to develop, but you can improve it by listening to conversations in different settings. For instance, when you watch TV shows, try to figure out the underlying meaning behind the words people say. What's the context? Why do they choose certain words? This kind of deep listening will help you understand how native speakers interpret each other's messages in everyday life. Another key part of understanding natural English is mastering the art of inference. Inference means understanding things that aren't directly stated. Native speakers do this all the time. For example, if someone says, "I can't believe I forgot my keys again," they might not be asking for help, but they might be hoping that you'll notice they're in trouble and offer to help them. It's not always about what's being said, but about reading between the lines. Let's take a look at how this works in a more detailed example. Imagine you're talking to a friend and they say, "I'm just not feeling it today." They might not come out and say they're sad or upset, but from the context of the conversation, you can infer that they're having a rough day. Native speakers do this all the time, and they often use nonverbal clues, like tone of voice or facial expressions, to help make inferences even clearer. One of the easiest ways to practice this is by watching movies or TV shows with the sound off. Try to watch the characters' body language and facial expressions, and see if you can figure out what's happening based only on their actions. Then, turn the sound on and see how close you were to understanding the context. In English, we also use a lot of idiomatic expressions. These are phrases where the meaning isn't directly connected to the individual words. For example, when someone says, "It's a piece of cake," they don't mean that something is literally a dessert. They're saying it's easy. Idioms like this can be tricky for non-native speakers, but once you get used to them, they make your speech sound much more natural and fluent. Let's look at a few common idioms. Break the ice, hit the nail on the head, a blessing in disguise, and caught between a rock and a hard place. Each of these idioms has a meaning that is not related to the individual words in the phrase. Native speakers use these expressions all the time, so it's important to learn them to understand real conversations. The best way to do this is by reading books, listening to podcasts, and watching shows in English. The more you encounter idioms, the more you'll start to understand them. Also, don't forget about phrasal verbs. These are combinations of verbs and prepositions or adverbs that change the meaning of the verb. For example, give up means to stop trying. Pick up means to gather something, and run into means to meet by chance. Phrasal verbs are everywhere in casual English, so getting familiar with them will help you understand what people are really saying. Native speakers use phrasal verbs all the time, and often in ways that don't make sense if you translate them literally. For instance, she turned down the job offer doesn't mean she physically turned the offer down. It means she rejected it. Understanding phrasal verbs is one of the keys to speaking and listening like a native. The next tip is about understanding humor in English. Humor is often cultural, and what's funny in one country might not be as funny in another. Native speakers often use humor to lighten the mood, but it can sometimes be tricky for non-native speakers to follow. Jokes, sarcasm, and irony are all common in everyday conversations. For example, if someone says, "Oh, great, another meeting," in a sarcastic tone, they're not actually happy about the meeting. They're expressing frustration or annoyance. If you don't pick up on the sarcasm, you might take their words literally, which could confuse you. The best way to get better at understanding humor is by watching comedy shows, stand-up performances, or listening to funny podcasts in English. Pay attention to how native speakers use sarcasm or irony in their jokes, and try to understand the tone they use. This will help you understand humor in conversations and make you sound more natural when you use humor yourself. Finally, let's talk about how to ask for clarification when you don't understand something. Even native speakers sometimes ask others to repeat themselves. It's totally normal. If you don't understand something, don't be afraid to ask for clarification. You can say things like, "Could you say that again?" Or, "I didn't catch that. What did you say?" In casual conversations, native speakers often do this without hesitation, so it's important to feel comfortable asking questions if you're not sure what's being said. As we continue to explore the world of English, it's time to think about how to expand your vocabulary and get comfortable with the nuances of the language. One of the most powerful tools to improve your listening skills is understanding the subtle differences between words that seem similar. Native speakers don't always use the most obvious word. They choose words based on the tone, the context, and the exact meaning they want to convey. For example, the words happy and joyful both mean feeling good, but they're used in different ways. Happy is a more general term, while joyful has a deeper, more intense feeling. You could say, "I'm happy to see you," but if you're really excited and full of emotion, you might say, "I'm so joyful to see you." Understanding these subtle differences in meaning is key to speaking and understanding like a native. Another example is the difference between talk and speak. While both are used to describe communication, they're often used in different contexts. Talk is more informal, and you can use it when you're chatting with friends. Let's talk about it later. On the other hand, speak is often used in more formal situations. Can you speak to the manager? Native speakers naturally choose the right word based on the situation, so being aware of these nuances will help you sound more natural and confident in your English conversations. The same goes for words like big and huge. Both mean something of large size, but huge emphasizes a much greater degree of size. You might say, "That's a big house," but if the house is extremely large, you'd probably say, "That's a huge house." These differences in intensity might seem small, but they add a lot of flavor and precision to your speech. And the more you understand these nuances, the better you'll be at understanding native speakers, who often use words with a specific intent to convey emotion, subtlety, or humor. One great way to improve your vocabulary is to read books, newspapers, or articles in English. When you come across a new word, pay attention to how it's used. Is it formal or informal? Is it used in a casual conversation or a more serious context? Keep track of these new words and try to use them in your own sentences. The more you read, the more you'll be exposed to a wider range of vocabulary and usage. But understanding words isn't just about knowing their meanings, it's about understanding their connotations. Connotation is the emotional or cultural meaning a word carries. For instance, the word cheap might simply mean something is low in price, but it often carries a negative connotation. If you say, "I bought a cheap shirt," it might imply that the shirt isn't of good quality. On the other hand, inexpensive is a more neutral or even positive way to describe something that costs less. Understanding the connotations of words is an important part of mastering any language, especially English. Sometimes, the difference between two similar words comes down to the emotions they evoke. For example, saying she's a confident person has a positive feel, while she's an arrogant person has a negative feel, even though both words describe someone with self-assurance. Next, let's talk about tone and how it affects the meaning of what's being said. In English, tone is everything. A simple sentence like, "I'm so happy for you," can be said in many different ways, and depending on the tone, it can mean different things. If someone says it with a smile, you know they're genuinely happy for you. But if the person says it sarcastically with a raised eyebrow, you can tell they might not actually be happy for you at all. This is why it's important to pay attention to tone when listening to native speakers. Tone can give you clues about whether someone is joking, serious, excited, or frustrated. It's often the tone that tells you whether someone is being friendly or rude, or whether they're genuinely interested in what you're saying or just waiting for their turn to talk. Let's take another example. If you're talking to a friend and they say, "Oh, great," in a cheerful tone, it means they're happy or excited. But if they say the same phrase in a monotone, it's likely that they're disappointed or not interested. Being able to pick up on these differences in tone is an essential skill when you're listening to English, especially because tone can change the meaning of an entire conversation. As you continue to practice listening, try to focus on how native speakers use tone to convey emotion or attitude. In movies, TV shows, and even in daily conversations, tone plays a huge role in understanding the message behind the words. So, listen closely and pay attention to how speakers use tone to influence the meaning of their words. Another important skill to develop is understanding humor and sarcasm. As I mentioned before, humor can be tricky because it doesn't always come across in the words themselves. Often, it's all about the delivery. Sarcasm, for example, is when someone says something but means the opposite. If a friend says, "Oh, fantastic," another flat tire, in a sarcastic tone, they don't mean it's fantastic. They're actually expressing frustration. Native speakers use humor and sarcasm in casual conversations to lighten the mood, but it can be difficult for non-native speakers to pick up on these cues, especially because they're often said with a deadpan expression or in a way that seems to contradict the actual words. To get better at understanding sarcasm, try listening for the tone and context. When someone says something that seems odd or too good to be true, think about whether they could be joking. Now that we've covered vocabulary, tone, and context, let's take things a step further and talk about how to truly master conversations in English. To think like a native speaker, you need to be able to participate in conversations with ease, whether you're discussing a serious topic or just chatting with friends. The key to this is understanding the flow of conversation and knowing how to keep it going smoothly. One thing you'll notice when listening to native speakers is that they often use conversational fillers like, well, you know, I mean, and like. These little words and phrases help keep the conversation flowing and give the speaker a moment to think before continuing. Native speakers use these fillers all the time, and it makes their speech sound natural. For example, if you ask someone, "What's your favorite movie?" they might respond, "Well, I really like action films, you know." Notice how "well" and "you know" give the speaker a little time to gather their thoughts before answering. These words don't add much meaning, but they help make the conversation feel less robotic and more spontaneous. If you want to sound more like a native speaker, start using these fillers when you speak. Don't worry about overusing them. They're a natural part of conversation. Just make sure to keep it balanced so you don't sound like you're stalling or unsure. When used correctly, these fillers make your speech sound more fluid and natural. Another important skill to develop is how to manage pauses in conversation. In English, pauses are normal and can be used to give the speaker a moment to think. Native speakers don't rush to fill every silence with words. Instead, they allow the conversation to breathe, creating space for each person to think and respond. For example, after someone asks you a question, instead of immediately answering, you might take a brief pause to think about your response. This not only makes you sound more confident, but it also gives you a chance to form a better, more thoughtful answer. So, don't be afraid of pauses. In fact, they're an important part of fluent conversation. They give both you and your conversation partner time to think and reflect on what's being said. If you feel uncomfortable with pauses, practice by listening to conversations in English and paying attention to when the speakers pause. It might surprise you how often they do this. As you get more comfortable with listening to native speakers, you'll also start to notice how they manage back and forth exchanges. In a conversation, native speakers often take turns talking, sometimes interrupting or finishing each other's sentences. This doesn't mean they're being rude. It's just part of how conversations flow naturally. For example, if two people are discussing a topic, one might start by saying, "I think the movie was great, and the other might jump in with, "But it was way too long, right?" This is a normal conversational technique where both speakers are actively engaged and bouncing ideas off each other. To sound natural in English, try practicing this turn-taking technique. You don't need to interrupt, but you can practice adding your thoughts in a way that flows with the conversation. One great way to practice this is by listening to podcasts or watching interviews where multiple people are talking. Pay attention to how the conversation shifts back and forth and how the speakers adjust their tone and pace to match the energy of the discussion. By practicing these subtle techniques, you'll learn to manage conversations with ease and fluency. Next, let's talk about how to handle disagreements in English. In any conversation, there are going to be moments when you don't agree with what someone is saying. But here's the thing, native speakers often disagree in a way that's respectful and doesn't shut down the conversation. They know how to voice their opinions without coming across as rude or confrontational. For example, if someone says, "I think traveling is a waste of time," A native speaker might respond by saying, "I see your point, but I think it's a great way to learn about different cultures." Notice how the disagreement is framed in a polite, respectful way. Instead of saying, "You're wrong," the speaker acknowledges the other person's point of view before offering their own opinion. When you practice disagreements in English, try to use phrases like, "I see where you're coming from, but," or "I understand your point, however." These phrases show that you're listening and respecting the other person's opinion, even though you don't necessarily agree. This is an important skill for sounding natural and maintaining good relationships in English conversations. Let's shift gears a bit and talk about how to handle emotions in English. Native speakers use specific phrases to express feelings in different situations. For example, if you're excited, you might say, "I'm so pumped," or "I'm totally hyped." If you're frustrated, you might say, "This is so annoying," or "I can't stand this anymore." These expressions help convey emotion in a way that feels genuine and relatable. Understanding how to express emotions in English is crucial if you want to connect with people on a deeper level. So, when you're listening to native speakers, pay attention to how they express their feelings. What words or phrases do they use? How do they change their tone when talking about something they care about? Try using similar phrases in your own conversations to add more emotion and intensity to your speech. Now that we've gone over a lot of important aspects of listening and speaking like a native, let's talk about building confidence in spontaneous conversations. One of the biggest challenges many learners face is feeling nervous when speaking English, especially when the conversation is unscripted or when they need to think on the spot. But the good news is that you can overcome this with practice and the right mindset. Native speakers don't always have the perfect words right away, and that's completely okay. They take their time to think, and often they pause or hesitate before speaking. What makes them sound fluent is their ability to keep going without letting a pause or mistake throw them off. If they forget a word, they don't panic. They just find another way to say it. For example, if someone forgets the word for a specific object, they might say, "The thing that you used to," or "it's like a big, round container." Native speakers are okay with not using the perfect word every time. They know how to communicate the idea effectively without worrying too much about exact phrasing. If you want to sound more confident in spontaneous conversations, start by practicing in real-world settings. Engage in casual chats with friends, classmates, or even strangers. The more you practice, the more comfortable you'll get. Don't worry if you make mistakes. They're part of the learning process. What matters is that you keep the conversation going and don't let fear of making mistakes stop you. Another great way to build confidence is by practicing thinking in English. This means trying to form your thoughts in English before you speak, instead of translating them from your native language. At first, this might feel a little challenging, but with time, you'll find that thinking in English becomes more natural. Start by describing things around you in English, the objects, the colors, the weather. The more you practice thinking in English, the more fluent and confident you'll become. One effective method is to listen to a short audio clip or watch a video in English and then summarize it in your own words. This helps you practice thinking quickly and speaking spontaneously. You're not just memorizing phrases, you're learning how to express ideas and opinions in English on the fly. Next, let's talk about how to handle small talk in English. Small talk might seem trivial, but it's an essential part of everyday conversations. Whether you're talking to a neighbor, a colleague, or a cashier, Small talk helps build rapport and establish a connection. Here are a few common topics that come up in casual conversations. 1. The weather. It's really hot today, isn't it? 2. Work or school. How's work going? Or how's school going for you? 3. Plans for the weekend. What are you doing this weekend? Or got any fun plans for the weekend? 4. Family or pets. How's your dog doing? Or how's your family? These topics may seem simple, but they're important because they allow you to practice speaking in a relaxed way. If you want to sound more like a native speaker, practice these types of conversations. Use the right tone, keep the conversation light, and don't be afraid to ask follow-up questions. Native speakers often engage in small talk without overthinking it. They just go with the flow. In addition to small talk, learning how to express opinions and ideas is another important skill in spontaneous conversations. When you express your opinion, it's important to sound confident, but also open-minded. For instance, instead of saying, "I hate that movie," a more natural way to express your opinion might be, "I didn't really enjoy that movie," or "that movie wasn't my favorite." This way, you're sharing your thoughts without sounding too harsh or negative. It's also important to know how to agree or disagree politely. For example, if someone says, "I think this city is beautiful," you can agree by saying, "I agree. It's such a beautiful place." But if you disagree, you could say, "I see your point, but I personally think it's a bit too crowded." Native speakers use these polite phrases all the time to keep the conversation respectful and friendly, even when they have different opinions. Another important point is knowing how to use humor in conversations. Humor is a huge part of English, and native speakers often joke around to make their conversations more enjoyable. It's essential to understand how humor works in English, especially because it's often based on wordplay, cultural references, or sarcasm. If you want to use humor in your conversations, start by learning some common jokes or funny phrases in English. Watch comedy shows or listen to funny podcasts and pay attention to how humor is used. One of the best ways to improve your humor skills in English is to practice telling simple jokes. For example, you might say, "Why don't skeletons fight each other?" "Because they don't have the guts." It's a light, simple joke, but it helps you practice using humor in conversation. As you get more comfortable, you can start adding your own jokes and making the conversation more fun. Now that we've covered various aspects of understanding native speakers and expressing yourself confidently, let's talk about how to refine your listening and speaking skills through real-world practice. To truly become fluent in English, you need to immerse yourself in the language, and that means practicing in as many real-life situations as possible. The best way to improve your listening skills is to listen to English in as many different contexts as possible. This means listening to a variety of accents, speech patterns, and styles of conversation. For example, listening to a formal speech or interview is great for understanding more structured English, but listening to podcasts, YouTube videos, or radio shows will expose you to casual, everyday English. One effective way to practice listening is by following along with audio materials that have transcripts or subtitles. First, listen to a portion of the audio without reading the transcript, then go back and read it to see if you understood everything. This will help you pick up on words or phrases you may have missed, and it will also show you where you need to improve. Afterward, listen to the same audio again and see if you can follow along more easily this time. Another great tool for improving your listening skills is watching movies or TV shows in English. Start with English subtitles and gradually try to turn them off as you become more comfortable. Pay attention to how the characters speak in different contexts, how they use slang or idioms, and how the tone of the conversation changes depending on the situation. The more you watch, the more familiar you'll become with the natural flow of English conversations. As you continue to listen and watch, try to mimic what you hear. This doesn't mean copying word for word, but rather repeating phrases or sentences to practice your pronunciation and intonation. By doing this, you'll start to sound more like a native speaker, and your speech will become more fluid. When it comes to speaking, the more you practice in real-world settings, the more confident you'll feel. One excellent way to do this is by joining English speaking groups or clubs. Whether it's a conversation group, a book club, or even an online community, these groups give you the opportunity to speak in a relaxed, non-judgmental environment. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. The goal is to practice and improve. If you don't have access to a speaking group, try finding a language exchange partner online. There are many websites and apps where you can connect with native speakers who are learning your language. This way, you can practice speaking English with someone who can correct your mistakes and offer feedback. Practicing with a partner is one of the best ways to improve your fluency because it simulates real-life conversations. Another helpful tip is to practice speaking out loud when you're by yourself. For instance, you can narrate your day, describe what you see around you, or practice giving presentations. This helps you think and speak in English without needing to rely on others. It's a great way to build confidence and improve your speaking speed. You might feel silly at first, but it's an incredibly effective method for improving fluency. If you're not sure how to practice listening in a more advanced way, start by listening to TED Talks or educational podcasts. These are great for improving your vocabulary and understanding complex ideas in English. As you listen, take notes on new words and phrases and try to use them in your conversations. This will help you expand your vocabulary and increase your ability to understand more advanced English speakers. When you're practicing speaking, it's important to focus on your pronunciation. Native speakers don't always pronounce words clearly, and they often use connected speech, where sounds blend together. For example, "What do you want?" might sound like "what I want" in a casual conversation. Practicing how native speakers connect their words will help you understand them more easily and help you speak more naturally. To improve your pronunciation, try listening to individual sounds that might be difficult for you. For example, English has a lot of vowel sounds, and some of them don't exist in other languages. Pay attention to these sounds and practice saying them out loud until you feel comfortable. There are plenty of resources online where you can listen to native speakers and practice mimicking their sounds. One final tip for refining your listening and speaking is to set small, achievable goals. For example, you could aim to learn 5 new words every day or commit to listening to a 10-minute English podcast every morning. As you accomplish these small goals, you'll gradually see improvements in both your listening and speaking skills. Consistency is key. By now, you've learned a lot about how to think like a native speaker, improve your listening skills, and become more confident in spontaneous conversations. But let's face it, learning a language isn't always easy. There will be moments when you feel frustrated, stuck, or like you're not improving as quickly as you'd like. That's normal. Every learner goes through this. The key is not to give up and to keep pushing forward, even when the going gets tough. One of the biggest challenges in learning a language is dealing with setbacks. You might make mistakes when speaking, or you might not understand something right away when listening. But here's the thing, mistakes are part of the process. Native speakers make mistakes too, and they don't let them stop them from communicating. So, if you make a mistake, don't stress. Instead, learn from it and move on. The more mistakes you make, the more you're learning and growing. Another common challenge is the feeling of being overwhelmed. There's so much to learn in English: vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation, listening skills, and more. It can be tempting to try and learn everything at once, but this can actually slow you down. Instead, focus on one thing at a time. For example, if you're working on improving your listening skills, spend a week just focusing on listening. Once you feel confident with that, move on to the next skill, like speaking or pronunciation. It's also easy to get discouraged if you feel like you're not progressing as fast as you'd like. But remember, language learning is a marathon, not a sprint. Fluency takes time, and progress is often slow at first. However, over time, you'll notice small improvements, and those add up. The key is to stay patient and keep practicing. Trust me, if you keep at it, you'll see results. One way to stay motivated is by setting small, achievable goals. Instead of focusing on becoming fluent overnight, set realistic goals that you can achieve in the short term. For example, you could set a goal to learn 10 new words a week, or to have a 5-minute conversation in English every day. These small wins will give you a sense of accomplishment and keep you motivated to keep going. Another tip for staying motivated is to celebrate your successes, no matter how small they seem. If you finally understand a TV show or manage to speak without hesitating, take a moment to recognize your achievement. These little victories will remind you that you're on the right track and keep you motivated to continue. It's also important to remind yourself why you're learning English in the first place. Whether it's for career opportunities, travel, or personal growth, keeping your end goal in mind will help you stay focused and motivated. Whenever you feel stuck, think about the reasons why you started this journey and let that inspire you to keep going. If you're feeling stuck or frustrated, try mixing up your routine. If you've been focusing on grammar for a while, take a break and watch an English movie or listen to a podcast. Sometimes, changing things up can help you recharge and refocus. You could also try a new method of learning, like language exchange or speaking with a tutor. Trying new things keeps the process fun and exciting, and it helps you stay engaged. The most important thing is to keep practicing, even if it feels like you're not getting anywhere. Language learning is all about consistency. The more you expose yourself to English, whether by listening, speaking, or reading, the more your skills will improve over time. Now, let's talk about how to make English a part of your everyday life. If you want to really master the language, you need to immerse yourself in it as much as possible. This means surrounding yourself with English in your daily life, whether you're listening to music, reading the news, or having conversations with friends. The more you expose yourself to the language, the more natural it will become. One simple way to immerse yourself is by changing the language settings on your phone or computer to English. This might feel uncomfortable at first, but it's a great way to practice. Every time you check your phone, you'll see English and it'll start to feel more familiar. Another great way to immerse yourself is by labeling objects around your home with their English names. For example, you can put a sticker on your door that says door, or on your fridge that says fridge. Every time you see these labels, it'll help reinforce the vocabulary in your mind. And don't forget about using English in your hobbies and interests. If you love cooking, find recipes in English. If you enjoy gaming, play English language games. Surrounding yourself with English in the areas you already enjoy will make learning feel less like a chore and more like a fun part of your life. Finally, try to find a community of English learners. Whether it's online or in person, connecting with other people who are learning English can be a huge boost to your motivation. You can share tips, practice speaking, and support each other through the tough times. Being part of a community helps you feel like you're not alone on this journey. Now that you've got a strong foundation and have been practicing consistently, let's dive into developing more advanced listening and speaking skills. At this stage, you should be feeling more comfortable with casual conversations, understanding natural speech, and even expressing yourself with some fluency. But if you really want to take your English to the next level, there are a few more techniques and skills you can focus on to refine your abilities. One of the most important aspects of advanced listening is the ability to understand different accents and dialects. As you continue to listen to more English, you'll start to realize that native speakers don't all speak the same way. Whether it's an American accent, a British accent, an Australian accent, or even regional dialects within those countries, there are many variations of English. This can be tricky at first, especially if you're only used to hearing one type of accent. So, how do you handle this? The best way is to expose yourself to different accents and styles of English. Listen to podcasts, watch TV shows, or even follow YouTube channels from different countries. Pay attention to how words are pronounced and how the speech rhythm might change. If you're listening to a new accent and find it hard to understand, don't be discouraged. With time and practice, your ear will adjust and you'll start to notice more similarities than differences. For example, in the UK, people might say, "I'm going to the shop," whereas in the US, they would say, "I'm going to the store." The meaning is the same, but the words are slightly different. By listening to these variations and practicing them, you'll develop a more flexible understanding of English and be able to handle conversations with speakers from all over the world. Another key skill for advanced listening is understanding different speaking speeds. Native speakers often talk quickly, and it can be difficult to keep up with the pace, especially in fast-paced conversations or media. But don't worry, with practice, you'll get used to this. Start by listening to slower-paced audio and gradually increase the speed. You can adjust the playback speed on platforms like YouTube or podcast apps, so you can practice at a pace that feels comfortable for you. When you're listening to something at a faster speed, focus on the key points rather than trying to catch every single word. Native speakers often drop small words or shorten phrases in fast speech, so it's more important to catch the main ideas and the tone of what's being said. For example, if someone says, "I'll catch you later," they might be dropping the "I'll see you later" part. Understanding these shortcuts is key to understanding rapid speech. Next, let's talk about advanced speaking skills. At this stage, it's important to not just speak correctly, but to also sound natural. Native speakers don't always speak in perfect grammatical structures, but they get their point across effectively by using a more conversational style. This means being able to use pauses, emphasize certain words, and play with rhythm in a way that makes your speech more engaging and relatable. For example, you could say, "I was thinking about going to the park," but a native speaker might say, "So I was thinking about going to the park." Notice how the use of adds a conversational tone, making it sound more relaxed. Another example could be emphasizing certain words for effect, like, "I really want to go to the park." These little details help you sound more natural and engaging in conversation. At an advanced level, You also need to focus on your ability to argue a point or defend an opinion effectively. This involves using phrases like, on the other hand, I see your point, but, or let me explain why I disagree. Native speakers use these kinds of expressions to navigate more complex conversations and debates. So, practicing these phrases will help you communicate with more precision and clarity, whether you're in a discussion at work, school, or just chatting with friends. Another advanced speaking skill is storytelling. Being able to tell a story fluently and engagingly is a huge part of natural conversation. Native speakers often tell stories in a way that's not just about facts, but also about how they felt, what they observed, and what they learned. The key to telling a good story is to add detail, use interesting vocabulary, and pace the story in a way that builds anticipation. For example, let's say you're telling a story about your trip to the beach. Instead of just saying, I went to the beach and had a good time, you could say, I remember the first time I stepped onto the beach. The sand felt warm under my feet. The waves were crashing, and I could smell the salty air. It was the perfect day to just relax and enjoy nature. By adding these details, you make the story come alive and sound more natural. Now, let's talk about expressing emotions more deeply in English. In advanced conversations, it's important to be able to express how you feel in different situations. Native speakers are often very expressive when they talk about their emotions, and they use words and phrases that convey not just the feeling itself, but also the intensity of it. For example, instead of just saying, I'm happy, you might say, I'm over the moon, or I'm absolutely thrilled. These phrases make the emotion more vivid and help you sound more engaged in the conversation. When you're speaking about something that makes you angry, sad, or excited, try to use more descriptive words that match the intensity of your emotion. For instance, instead of saying, I was really annoyed, you could say, I was furious, or I was beyond frustrated. These strong adjectives help make your emotions clearer and add more personality to your speech. Finally, let's talk about the importance of staying authentic and not overthinking everything. One of the hallmarks of fluent speakers is their ability to speak naturally without second-guessing every word they say. If you're learning English, you might sometimes feel the urge to get everything perfect, but here's the truth. Native speakers make mistakes all the time, and that's okay. The goal is to communicate effectively, and if you're being true to yourself and your ideas, that's what really matters. As we wrap up our journey toward mastering English at a C1 level, it's time to focus on how to apply everything you've learned in real-world situations. You've gained a lot of knowledge about listening, speaking, vocabulary, and conversation flow. Now, let's put it all into practice in ways that will help you become more comfortable with English in everyday life. One of the best ways to practice English is by putting yourself in situations where you're required to use the language. This doesn't just mean sitting in a classroom or listening to audio recordings. It's about living and breathing the language in your daily life. The more you expose yourself to English, the more natural it will feel. Engage in social settings. A great way to practice English is by engaging in social situations where you can have real conversations. This could be meeting up with friends who speak English, attending social events, or joining a club or group where English is spoken. The more you interact with others in English, the more you'll get used to the rhythm of the language and the flow of real-time conversation. You'll also get more comfortable using expressions, slang, and idioms that are commonly used in daily speech. If you don't have many English-speaking friends, you can still practice by finding language exchange partners. There are many websites and apps where you can connect with people who are fluent in English and are looking to practice your native language. This can be a fun and rewarding way to learn, and it's a great way to build confidence in speaking. Travel or immerse yourself in an English-speaking environment. If possible, travel to a country where English is spoken. This immersion experience is invaluable because it forces you to use the language in real-life situations. Whether you're ordering food at a restaurant, asking for directions, or just chatting with locals, you'll be exposed to different accents and colloquial language. Being in an environment where you have to use English to get by will push you to improve your skills faster. If traveling isn't an option right now, there are still ways to immerse yourself in English. Change the language settings on your devices to English. Watch movies or TV shows in English. Listen to English podcasts and read books or articles in English. The key is to surround yourself with the language as much as possible. Even if you're not actively studying, constant exposure will make you more comfortable with English over time. Learn English through your interests. One of the best ways to keep yourself motivated and engaged with the language is by incorporating English into the things you already love to do. If you're into sports, watch games or read news about your favorite teams in English. If you love cooking, try finding recipes in English and follow them along. Whatever your interests are, try to find ways to make them more English-centric. Not only will this help you learn new vocabulary related to your hobbies, but it will also keep you excited about learning. Record yourself and reflect. Another great practice is recording yourself speaking in English. This can feel a bit awkward at first, but it's one of the most effective ways to track your progress and improve. Record yourself speaking about a topic for a few minutes, then listen back and note areas where you can improve. Are there words or phrases you struggle with? Is your pronunciation clear? How is your rhythm and tone? This self-assessment will help you pinpoint areas of improvement and continue working toward fluency. You can also try recording short video diaries where you talk about your day, your thoughts, or any interesting topic. Watching these videos later can help you see how much progress you've made, and it will also give you an opportunity to correct yourself and refine your speaking skills. Practice listening in varied situations. Advanced listening skills aren't just about understanding what people say in everyday conversations. They also involve being able to follow along in more complex situations, like lectures, debates, or professional settings. To improve your ability to listen in these situations, seek out content that is a bit more formal or academic. TED Talks, online lectures, and podcasts on specialized topics are great resources. These materials often use advanced vocabulary and more structured speech, which will challenge your listening comprehension and help you understand English in more varied contexts. Listening to news reports or interviews can also improve your listening skills. News broadcasts often use more formal language and are a great way to expose yourself to new vocabulary and pronunciation. As you listen, take notes on important words and phrases and look up their meanings afterward. Over time, you'll start to recognize these words when you hear them again in other contexts. Mastering the art of small talk. While small talk might seem simple, it's actually an important skill to master, especially for building relationships and networking. Whether it's chatting with a colleague at work or striking up a conversation with someone at a party, small talk helps break the ice and shows that you're comfortable speaking in social settings. When practicing small talk, focus on making the conversation flow naturally. Ask open-ended questions that require more than just a yes or no answer. For example, instead of asking, "Did you have a good weekend?" try, "What did you do over the weekend?" This invites the other person to share more and gives you more to talk about. Push yourself to speak regularly. It's easy to get caught up in reading and listening practice, but speaking is where the real progress happens. Even if you're nervous or unsure of your skills, make it a point to speak English every day. The more you speak, the more confident and comfortable you'll become. Find opportunities to practice speaking throughout your day, whether it's having a conversation with a friend, practicing with a language exchange partner, or speaking to yourself in the mirror. The more you speak, the easier it will become to express your thoughts and ideas in English. Over time, your speech will become more fluid, and you'll feel more confident in any conversation. As we wrap up our journey toward mastering English at a C1 level, it's time to focus on how to apply everything you've learned in real-world situations. You've gained a lot of knowledge about listening, speaking, vocabulary, and conversation flow. Now, let's put it all into practice in ways that will help you become more comfortable with English in everyday life. One of the best ways to practice English is by putting yourself in situations where you're required to use the language. This doesn't just mean sitting in a classroom or listening to audio recordings. It's about living and breathing the language in your daily life. The more you expose yourself to English, the more natural it will feel. Engage in social settings. A great way to practice English is by engaging in social situations where you can have real conversations. This could be meeting up with friends who speak English, attending social events, or joining a club or group where English is spoken. The more you interact with others in English, the more you'll get used to the rhythm of the language and the flow of real-time conversation. You'll also get more comfortable using expressions, slang, and idioms that are commonly used in daily speech. If you don't have many English-speaking friends, you can still practice by finding language exchange partners. There are many websites and apps where you can connect with people who are fluent in English and are looking to practice your native language. This can be a fun and rewarding way to learn, and it's a great way to build confidence in speaking. Travel or immerse yourself in an English-speaking environment. If possible, travel to a country where English is spoken. This immersion experience is invaluable because it forces you to use the language in real-life situations. Whether you're ordering food at a restaurant, asking for directions, or just chatting with locals, you'll be exposed to different accents and colloquial language. Being in an environment where you have to use English to get by will push you to improve your skills faster. If traveling isn't an option right now, there are still ways to immerse yourself in English. Change the language settings on your devices to English. Watch movies or TV shows in English. Listen to English podcasts and read books or articles in English. The key is to surround yourself with the language as much as possible. Even if you're not actively studying, constant exposure will make you more comfortable with English over time. Learn English through your interests. One of the best ways to keep yourself motivated and engaged with the language is by incorporating English into the things you already love to do. If you're into sports, watch games or read news about your favorite teams in English. If you love cooking, try finding recipes in English and follow them along. Whatever your interests are, try to find ways to make them more English-centric. Not only will this help you learn new vocabulary related to your hobbies, but it will also keep you excited about learning. Record yourself and reflect. Another great practice is recording yourself speaking in English. This can feel a bit awkward at first, but it's one of the most effective ways to track your progress and improve. Record yourself speaking about a topic for a few minutes, then listen back and note areas where you can improve. Are there words or phrases you struggle with? Is your pronunciation clear? How is your rhythm and tone? This self-assessment will help you pinpoint areas of improvement and continue working toward fluency. You can also try recording short video diaries where you talk about your day, your thoughts, or any interesting topic. Watching these videos later can help you see how much progress you've made, and it will also give you an opportunity to correct yourself and refine your speaking skills. Practice listening in varied situations. Advanced listening skills aren't just about understanding what people say in everyday conversations. They also involve being able to follow along in more complex situations, like lectures, debates, or professional settings. To improve your ability to listen in these situations, seek out content that is a bit more formal or academic. TED Talks, online lectures, and podcasts on specialized topics are great resources. These materials often use advanced vocabulary and more structured speech, which will challenge your listening comprehension and help you understand English in more varied contexts. Listening to news reports or interviews can also improve your listening skills. News broadcasts often use more formal language and are a great way to expose yourself to new vocabulary and pronunciation. As you listen, take notes on important words and phrases and look up their meanings afterward. Over time, you'll start to recognize these words when you hear them again in other contexts. Mastering the art of small talk. While small talk might seem simple, it's actually an important skill to master, especially for building relationships and networking. Whether it's chatting with a colleague at work or striking up a conversation with someone at a party, small talk helps break the ice and shows that you're comfortable speaking in social settings. When practicing small talk, focus on making the conversation flow naturally. Ask open-ended questions that require more than just a yes or no answer. For example, instead of asking, "Did you have a good weekend?" try, "What did you do over the weekend?" This invites the other person to share more and gives you more to talk about. Push yourself to speak regularly. It's easy to get caught up in reading and listening practice, but speaking is where the real progress happens. Even if you're nervous or unsure of your skills, make it a point to speak English every day. The more you speak, the more confident and comfortable you'll become. Find opportunities to practice speaking throughout your day, whether it's having a conversation with a friend, practicing with a language exchange partner, or speaking to yourself in the mirror. The more you speak, the easier it will become to express your thoughts and ideas in English. Over time, your speech will become more fluid and you'll feel more confident in any conversation. Now that we've covered a wide range of techniques and strategies for improving your listening and speaking skills, let's finish up with some final tips to help you achieve true fluency in English. The key to mastering any language is consistency, practice, and maintaining a positive mindset throughout the learning process. Let's break down some of the most important factors that will keep you on track and motivated. The more you expose yourself to English, the more natural it will feel. Engage in social settings. A great way to practice English is by engaging in social situations where you can have real conversations. This could be meeting up with friends who speak English, attending social events, or joining a club or group where English is spoken. The more you interact with others in English, the more you'll get used to the rhythm of the language and the flow of real-time conversation. You'll also get more comfortable using expressions, slang, and idioms that are commonly used in daily speech. If you don't have many English-speaking friends, you can still practice by finding language exchange partners. There are many websites and apps where you can connect with people who are fluent in English and are looking to practice your native language. This can be a fun and rewarding way to learn, and it's a great way to build confidence in speaking. Travel or immerse yourself in an English-speaking environment. If possible, travel to a country where English is spoken. This immersion experience is invaluable because it forces you to use the language in real-life situations. Whether you're ordering food at a restaurant, asking for directions, or just chatting with locals, you'll be exposed to different accents and colloquial language. Being in an environment where you have to use English to get by will push you to improve your skills faster. If traveling isn't an option right now, there are still ways to immerse yourself in English. Change the language settings on your devices to English. Watch movies or TV shows in English. Listen to English podcasts and read books or articles in English. The key is to surround yourself with the language as much as possible. Even if you're not actively studying, constant exposure will make you more comfortable with English over time. Learn English through your interests. One of the best ways to keep yourself motivated and engaged with the language is by incorporating English into the things you already love to do. If you're into sports, watch games or read news about your favorite teams in English. If you love cooking, try finding recipes in English and follow them along. Whatever your interests are, try to find ways to make them more English-centric. Not only will this help you learn new vocabulary related to your hobbies, but it will also keep you excited about learning. Record yourself and reflect. Another great practice is recording yourself speaking in English. This can feel a bit awkward at first, but it's one of the most effective ways to track your progress and improve. Record yourself speaking about a topic for a few minutes, then listen back and note areas where you can improve. Are there words or phrases you struggle with? Is your pronunciation clear? How is your rhythm and tone? This self-assessment will help you pinpoint areas of improvement and continue working toward fluency. You can also try recording short video diaries where you talk about your day, your thoughts, or any interesting topic. Watching these videos later can help you see how much progress you've made, and it will also give you an opportunity to correct yourself and refine your speaking skills. Practice listening in varied situations. Advanced listening skills aren't just about understanding what people say in everyday conversations. They also involve being able to follow along in more complex situations, like lectures, debates, or professional settings. To improve your ability to listen in these situations, seek out content that is a bit more formal or academic. TED Talks, online lectures, and podcasts on specialized topics are great resources. These materials often use advanced vocabulary and more structured speech, which will challenge your listening comprehension and help you understand English in more varied contexts. Listening to news reports or interviews can also improve your listening skills. News broadcasts often use more formal language and are a great way to expose yourself to new vocabulary and pronunciation. As you listen, take notes on important words and phrases and look up their meanings afterward. Over time, you'll start to recognize these words when you hear them again in other contexts. Mastering the art of small talk. While small talk might seem simple, it's actually an important skill to master, especially for building relationships and networking. Whether it's chatting with a colleague at work or striking up a conversation with someone at a party, small talk helps break the ice and shows that you're comfortable speaking in social settings. When practicing small talk, focus on making the conversation flow naturally. Ask open-ended questions that require more than just a yes or no answer. For example, instead of asking, "Did you have a good weekend?" try, "What did you do over the weekend?" This invites the other person to share more and gives you more to talk about. Push yourself to speak regularly. It's easy to get caught up in reading and listening practice, but speaking is where the real progress happens. Even if you're nervous or unsure of your skills, make it a point to speak English every day. The more you speak, the more confident and comfortable you'll become. Find opportunities to practice speaking throughout your day, whether it's having a conversation with a friend, practicing with a language exchange partner, or speaking to yourself in the mirror. The more you speak, the easier it will become to express your thoughts and ideas in English. Over time, your speech will become more fluid and you'll feel more confident in any conversation. Now that we've covered a wide range of techniques and strategies for improving your listening and speaking skills, let's finish up with some final tips to help you achieve true fluency in English. The key to mastering any language is consistency, practice, and maintaining a positive mindset throughout the learning process. Let's break down some of the most important factors that will keep you on track and motivated. 1. Embrace mistakes as part of the journey. One of the biggest obstacles many learners face is the fear of making mistakes. It's completely natural to feel this way, especially when speaking a foreign language. But here's the reality: mistakes are a part of learning. Even native speakers make mistakes, and they don't let them stop them from communicating. Instead of fearing mistakes, use them as learning opportunities. When you make a mistake, take note of it, and remember that next time, you'll do better. The more mistakes you make, the more you'll grow, so embrace them as part of your language journey. 2. Stay consistent with your practice. Consistency is the key to language learning. It's much more effective to practice a little bit every day than to study for hours on end only once in a while. Try to incorporate English into your daily routine, whether it's by listening to an English podcast during your commute, reading an article in English, or speaking to a friend. Setting aside time every day, even if it's just for 15 to 30 minutes, will keep the language fresh in your mind and help you retain what you've learned. 3. Set specific, achievable goals. Setting clear, specific goals will help you stay focused and motivated. For example, instead of saying, "I want to get better at English," try setting a goal like, "I want to learn 20 new words this week," or "I want to be able to have a 5-minute conversation in English every day." These smaller goals are more achievable and will give you a sense of accomplishment as you meet them. Over time, these small wins will build up and you'll start noticing significant improvements in your English skills. 4. Surround yourself with English as much as possible. One of the most effective ways to accelerate your learning is to immerse yourself in the language as much as possible. Surround yourself with English media, TV shows, movies, music, books, news, and podcasts. When you're constantly exposed to English, even in passive ways, you'll start picking up new vocabulary, phrases, and expressions. The more you expose yourself to English, the more natural it will feel to think and speak in the language. 5. Don't be afraid to use new vocabulary. As you learn new words and phrases, don't hesitate to use them in your conversations. The more you practice using new vocabulary, the more comfortable you'll become with it. Even if you make mistakes, don't worry. Native speakers will appreciate your efforts, and you'll quickly learn how to use the words more effectively in future conversations. The key is to keep using the language actively and applying what you learn. 6. Listen actively, not passively. When you're listening to English, whether it's in a podcast, movie, or conversation, make sure to listen actively. This means really focusing on the content, paying attention to the vocabulary, intonation, and speech patterns. If you hear a word or phrase you don't understand, don't just skip over it. Look it up, learn it, and practice using it. Active listening helps you internalize new language and makes you more aware of the subtle nuances in how English is spoken. 7. Take advantage of technology. There are countless language learning apps, websites, and tools that can help you practice English. Apps like Duolingo, Babbel, or Memrise are great for learning new words, practicing grammar, and improving pronunciation. Online platforms like YouTube and TED Talks provide endless content that can help you practice listening and speaking. Use technology to your advantage by incorporating these tools into your daily learning routine. They can add variety to your practice and make learning more fun. 8. Build confidence slowly. Building confidence in English takes time, especially if you're not speaking the language regularly. But every conversation, every interaction, and every moment you practice builds your confidence. Start with low-pressure situations, like talking to a friend, and gradually work your way up to more challenging scenarios. If you're nervous about speaking, remember that most people are understanding and they'll appreciate the effort you put into learning the language. 9. Read aloud to improve pronunciation. One great way to improve your pronunciation and fluency is by reading aloud. When you read aloud, you're practicing your pronunciation, rhythm, and intonation. It also helps with understanding how words flow together in sentences. Try reading a book, article, or even a script from a movie or podcast in English. Pay attention to the sounds of the words and practice saying them as clearly and naturally as you can. 10. Keep challenging yourself. As you continue to improve your English, don't be afraid to challenge yourself. As your skills grow, seek out more difficult materials and situations. For example, you might try reading books that are a bit more advanced or watching movies without subtitles. Challenge yourself to have longer conversations in English or tackle more complex topics. These challenges will push you further and help you grow as a speaker and listener. 11. Stay positive and patient. Finally, stay positive and patient with yourself. Learning a language is a marathon, not a sprint. There will be moments when it feels like you're not progressing fast enough, but remember that every bit of practice is moving you closer to your goal. Celebrate your achievements, no matter how small, and trust that with consistent effort, you'll reach fluency in due time.